And we play all the way for Leeds United. Elland Road is the only place for us. With heart and soul for the goal that's clearly sighted. We're out to toast each other from that silver cup.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Leeds United News and Views podcast. As always, I'm CJ, the co-host / main host. Chris, we'll be covering a few topics today. We'll be covering a review of Everton match day. We'll be covering a little bit of a preview of the Crewe Alexandra match day coming up on Wednesday for the EFL Cup. We'll also be covering a few topics such as is Bamford on the up and up or not? And also, is Liam Cooper worthy of the captaincy in next week's game? To find out that, keep on listening throughout the episode, and we will be talking about that. Right, match day. Chris, mate, what's your thoughts on how Leeds performed against Everton last night / yesterday for Leeds United people in the UK?
So we're recording this, it's Sunday early afternoon. We're recording this about 1:30, so it's still very fresh in our minds, which is good. And the first point I want to make is, Jesus, how good is it to have a full Elland Road back? It was
goosebumps, mate.
It was bloody fantastic. I have not heard such a heartfelt rendition of Marching On Together from a live crowd. It was goosebumps. It was literal goosebumps. It was it's something that's been missing from a very sanitized football in the last year and a half, and it was just so damn bloody good to have a full Elland Road back.
One quick mention that I would like to give to Leeds United is what they did at the beginning of the game after they'd walked on to Marching On Together, they then put a tribute to the former players who have passed away, such as Peter Lorimer and other players, as well as a clapping tribute to all of the frontline workers, like first responders and all that. I think that was an absolutely touching tribute for all of those involved.
And I actually preferred that, and just touching on what you said, I think I prefer that to the classic minute silence.
Yes, I think so too. The clapping is great.
I think with the minute silence, it relies on everyone sort of participating in the same vein. And I think, a stadium is meant to be full of noise. It's not taking away from what a minute silence is trying to achieve, but a stadium is meant to be full of noise. And it is such a raucous stadium like Elland Road. A minute's applause or a minute's making as much noise as you can in respect of the legends gone by.
Exactly. I think reserve a minute's silence for Veterans Type Day or Remembrance Day. Those days, absolutely keep a minute's silence. But for those sort of things, definitely minutes clapping or minutes cheering or something like that.
Yep. And I think that's the way. I think that's the way players like Lorimer and whatnot would have wanted.
Absolutely.
It's and the names lit up on the names lit up on the board around the pitch. The little LED board that we've now got. The names lit up. It was touching. It was, I imagine if you were in the stadium, it was probably almost tear-jerking combined with Marching On Together. We also saw flags in the crowd, which were fantastic. Remnant of when the club played Derby in that semi-final a few years ago. Everyone in the crowd in attendance, we won't talk about the game. No. Everyone in attendance got a scarf. And I think it's good that when there's such a big game like the return of fans to a stadium after a year and a half or a semi-final or something like that, I think it's good that the club gives everyone in attendance something to physically take back from the game.
Yes.
And it added that little bit extra to the atmosphere, I think. The one thing I did notice, and this is going to be controversial, when we do things like this, and it happened with the scarves and it happened last night with the flags, we're really, really embracing the whole fluoro yellow thing. Yeah. I'm not sure what you think of that, but I think...
I don't like it. Go back to this type of yellow, not the fluoro yellow. Fuck it off. I prefer last year's home strip with the blue stripes, not the bullshit fluoro yellow.
And it's the same as the fluoro yellow on the side of the shirt this year. It's it assaults your eyes. It's so damn bright. But anyway, I digress. I'm tearing up just thinking about it now. It was touching
It was
stuff.
touching. It really was. It really was. Sorry to tangent into that. Nitty gritty time. Everton review. Let's go. Give your thoughts on the Everton match, mate.
In terms of the result, all things being equal, I think it was the point was made on other podcasts. I'm not going to name drop who they were, but the point was made on other podcasts because it's a new manager and because it's Everton. You couldn't really go into this game.
So getting onto the actual game, Everton against Leeds at Elland Road. What are your thoughts on an absolutely shithouse weather day as well?
Oh, it was almost biblical. The first game back at Elland Road with full crowds, it bloody rains. Very, very Yorkshire weather. In terms of the result, fantastic game of football if you're a neutral. If you supported another club and you just wanted to watch the game just as a neutral.
It's a good Saturday Arvo footy.
A great Saturday Arvo of football for the neutrals and an entertaining game of football. In terms of the result, as a Leeds fan, I think it was fair. It was one of those games, and this has happened a lot in the past. It happened at Old Trafford. It happened a lot last year. It's been very Leeds lately to make things more difficult for ourselves than they actually need to be made.
Yes.
We went behind twice in the game, but we also came back twice in the game.
Yes, with Klich, the clutch.
Exactly, Klich. If you look at the shooting statistics, we'll break down the statistics. If you look at the shooting statistics, it was actually pretty even. 17 shots. Amazingly, both sides had exactly 17 shots for the game.
Yep.
Everton, however, managed to put 8 of those shots on target, whereas we only managed 4.
So we halved their amount of shots on target.
We halved their amounts of shots on target, which was also a problem that we had somewhat last year, and where we could create chances, we just couldn't put the bloody ball in the back of the net. And last night that happened. It happened for us last night. In terms of possession, we could not have dominated possession in that game anymore if we had tried. And it very much goes to show the old cliche of football that possession does not guarantee that you're going to win the game. Then we get down to the important part of it. Who made the better chances? And I think all things considered, once again,
Liam Cooper gifted them their first goal.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Everton definitely had the better chances. Especially on the breaks. Damari Gray, what can you say about his performance last night? He was ever present out wide. And there were numerous times where he had the ball, he was roaring down the wing, and I thought, if he times this right, it's another goal. Yeah. If he times this right. And for a team as pacey as we are, that has made such a name for ourselves as we are on the fast break, it was strange watching another team really play the type of football that we try and play well. And I genuinely do believe, there are a lot of naysayers out there, I genuinely do believe that if they continue playing this brand of football, they're going to do well. They're probably not in the conversation for the Champions League, but they're definitely in the conversation for Europa, and most certainly that new Conference League that we actually only missed out by a few points last season.
So, during last night's match, or yesterday if you're in the UK, did you think that there were times where Leeds / our team were playing in their own head / to the moment, like as in to the occasion, rather than the actual what's in front of them?
I think it's been prevalent in Leeds' game for quite a long time now. And this isn't just in the Premier League. This dates back to the Championship days where we play well, but for some reason we get in our own way. At times, we are our own biggest enemy. I remember years and years ago in the Championship, there was a game that we played at the KC Stadium against Hull City. We were favoured to win the game heavily. Hull were on a horrible run of form. And we went in there and we barely scraped a result against them. It's sort of been like that for a while now, where we go into a game, we play exceptionally well. We do all of the things that we need to do, but we just can't get the result. Sometimes the biggest hurdle that we've got is to play our own game effectively. Unfortunately for us, Damari Gray had a great game.
Yeah.
1.7 million from Bayer Leverkusen. An absolute
Mate, what
gem.
a steal! What a steal!
He had a solid game out against Southampton match day one, and unfortunately for us, he had a solid game against us. The build up to the Damari Gray goal was actually quite lucky. Pascal Struijk, who has been fairly solid for us as a cameo defender, I guess you could call it. He's been solid for us. He was caught out slightly. The ball's gone into the box. Damari Gray has turned Stuart Dallas inside out, and the ball's gone through his legs into the back of the net. Unfortunately, out of the reach of Meslier, who otherwise had a fairly solid game. I think questions need to be asked about where Luke Ayling was, his placement wise during the build up to that. I couldn't see him on my television screen. People that were there probably would be better placed to say where he was. But yeah, unfortunately,
he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Let's put it that way.
No. Unfortunately, it fell to Stuart Dallas to stop what was a great piece of individual brilliance. And I think it just further drives home the fact that the sooner players like Koch and Llorente get back, the better. Apparently, Llorente is 99.9% there.
Just needs a bit of actual match time,
he
such as the EFL Cup, to get a bit of match fitness.
Exactly, and we'll touch on that later. But I think the sooner players like Llorente get back, the sooner we can start putting some of these disappointing defensive mistakes we've been making of late behind us.
Absolutely. That was a good bit.
Was good.
Just trying to think. Yep. So in 3, 2, 1.
Last night there were many facets of the game in where we were our own worst enemy.
What are your thoughts on Liam Cooper and that absolutely brain snap bullshit yellow card that he gave away, and which resulted in their first goal, which put us 1-0 down early on in the game?
I think that it was contentious because both sides make a fantastic point as to why it probably was a penalty and why it probably wasn't a penalty. There's a phrase, I can't remember it. I wish I could go back and watch the live broadcast. There was a phrase they used when it went to VAR. The decision had to be made on the grounds of consequential consequential contact.
Yes.
That's the phrase.
Yes.
So the interpretation of VAR is the contact that's being made of consequence to the actual play itself.
I believe that he would have scored the goal if he hadn't have been impeded like that.
Now, there's a school
referee agreed, unfortunately.
The referee did agree, and at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. There was, however, quite a lot of argument online about it. A lot of people made the point that he was already going down. When Cooper initiated the shirt tug, he was already pretty much going down to the ground. It was one of those weird plays in football in where I think it looked a lot worse in the replay than it actually did online.
I agree. There was no bloody stomping on the boot or anything like that.
Exactly. And it was subtle enough. I think the penalty was subtle enough in where live... It probably didn't. It probably maybe on any given day he could have gotten away with it. But when you watched it in slow motion on all the angles on VAR, the referee was never not going to. Pardon me. The referee was never not going to.
Do you
give
think
that
that with the VAR it was worthy of only a penalty and not a yellow card?
Well, once again, it's up to the referee's individual interpretation.
That's why I'm asking you for your opinion.
I genuinely don't know. Removing Leeds bias, 100% a penalty every single day of the week.
Penalty, absolutely.
When it's referred to VAR.
Yes.
Any other referee may not have called that. In a world where VAR doesn't exist, and this is why people get so upset about VAR. From the minute the play was stopped, and it was timed, from the minute play was stopped to the minute that he pointed to the penalty spot, 6 minutes. It's too long. You don't need 6 minutes. All he needs to do is
look at 2-3 angles, slow mo for 2 minutes max.
And on tally, we've got the luxury of watching it on tally. We wish we were there, but on tally. With the replays, you didn't need all the fancy angles and I could have literally
gone and made a cup of tea and made a sandwich for ready to go.
Exactly, and that's the problem with VAR.
Liam Cooper, does he deserve the captaincy against the Crewe Alexandra game coming up on Wednesday for the EFL Cup?
I think that long term, no, he's probably not the answer to our future captaincy questions. Long term. Short term, the only person that I can think of that you would replace him as captain is Calvin Phillips.
I reckon, or Dallas.
Or Stewie Dallas or Luke Ayling. I think that those three have given to the cause for so long and so passionately that, all three of them embody what it means to be a Leeds United supporter. And that's what you need in a captain. You need someone that embodies what it means to pull on that white shirt every week.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has to be someone that leads by example and someone that is consistently putting in hard-fought performances.
Speaking of that, let's talk about Calvin Phillips' efforts last night. What a return game, as in return in the sense of full 90 minutes. And mate, did you see some of those things that he managed to get out of along the line and stuff?
That midfield performance that we put in last night was absolute night and day.
Oh,
I'm trying to distance myself as far as I can from the Old Trafford performance, but it was a different midfield last night. And I think a lot of that has to do with the work rate Calvin Phillips put in. If he can continue in that vein of form, I think that our midfield is in good form, barring injury. And once again, that brings up the midfield debate in terms of transfers. Do we need another midfield? I think that we probably do. That's a conversation for.
I think for depth reasons, not necessarily first team starting, but depth for sure.
But I certainly do think that Calvin made the difference last night. His performance was
unparalleled
definitely
in my opinion. I think he was the best midfield on the field of both teams, and that's removing my Leeds bias. Rafinha, his game last night. What are your thoughts on that?
Rafinha needed to have a good game. I think after the flat performance the week before, and the very angry performance the week before, I think Rafinha really needed a good game. He also needed a good game from the people around him.
He did.
But he needed a good individual performance, and we got that last night. The goal he scored, my God! It's in contention
Highlights.
for it's in contention for goal of the month, definitely.
And did you know that it actually put him in the same category as Peter Lorimer, being the only other player for Leeds to have scored in 3 consecutive games against Everton?
That is absolutely correct. A bit of history was made last night. He has turned Everton into his colloquial B word. He's amazing record he's on, but the goal was even better. Liam Cooper, of all people, somewhat redeeming himself. The goal came from very much an overhit cross into the box from Calvin Phillips from nothing. Cooper's managed to pick it up behind the pack, dish it out to Rafinha, who was in,
and he's just boom,
absolute miles of space. You could have fit a Coles truck between the space that Rafinha had. And he's just hit it sweet as a nut, bottom left corner. My God, absolute cracker of a goal.
Absolute scenes.
Another person that scored a fantastic goal in that game for us was Matthias Klich. Absolute classic clutch Klich. I wouldn't say it was as next level as Rafinha's goal was, but I think
it was definitely what we needed when he did it.
Exactly. It was the goal that we scored to equalise the game right before half time. It was a ball that Patrick Bamford, once again with his wonderful off the ball work, he's picked up a loose pass from midfield. He's run it to the edge of the box. He's threaded the needle past 2 defenders into a Matthias Klich that has just timed his run impeccably, and Klich has hit the back of the net. It's a classic clutch Klich goal, the kind of goal that we've come to expect from Klich.
Absolutely, and we'll just talk about one more topic of the game, and then we'll move on to the Crewe Alexandra game because we're running out of time almost. Delph coming back to Elland Road and getting a standing ovation.
Fabian Delph was always going to get a big return to a full Elland Road. He was one of those big name players that made the difference for us back in the early 2000s. Exactly. Academy graduate, Fabian Delph. Great standing ovation in a game that at that point was actually pretty tense.
Yes, it was.
He was being brought in when the score was 2-2 and it looked like it could go either way.
Yes.
So for the crowd to respond to that positively to him being brought on, it was always going to be that way, but it was touching. It was definitely touching.
Absolutely. And now moving on to the game coming up in a few days. It's
Crewe,
not
Alexandra.
a Premier League game. It's an EFL Cup game, Crewe,
It is.
Alexandra.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the starting 11? Are there any changes that need to be made? And also, what's your score prediction?
I'm not concerned about the Crewe Alexandra game, but what I will say is Leeds have a very long and proud history of losing EFL Cup games to lower positions.
Games that we should win.
Exactly, games that we should win against lower league opposition. Very long and proud history.
Unfortunately, proud.
Unfortunately, I would like to think that Bielsa has very much learned the EFL lesson from years gone by. I don't think that we will see a full-strength Leeds side by any stretch of the imagination. I think that bench players coming through like Adam Forshaw and players like that may get a bit of a longer run out. Players that maybe need game time before they can come into a Premier League side. For example, I'm expecting.
If you're Bielsa, who do you rest for the Crewe Alexandra game, and who do you bring in?
First of all, I would bring in Llorente.
Yep.
The sources that I've heard from say that Llorente is pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
He's not quite there in terms of a Premier League return, but I think the EFL Cup will be his place to come back.
Yep.
In terms of resting, nobody really comes to mind, and it's why Bielsa is such a genius. But I do see players rested. I think we'll win it, but I think it'll be closer than what we would like it to be. I think we'll win it 2-0.
I'll definitely agree to that. Stipulated, obviously, because it's up to the football gods as to how it plays out. But yeah, absolutely, I think I agree with that. I'm just going to do a quick clap.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. So that about wraps up this episode of the Leeds United News and Views.
Yep.
For anyone who's interested no matter where you're listening, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple, watching it on Facebook or YouTube, be sure to head over and like our page on Facebook. It's Leeds United News and Views, and also follow us on Instagram, because that's where we'll be posting our own in-depth article reviews written by Chris, and we'll also be updating you guys as to when our next episode is dropping.
We are so proud, we shout it out.